and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Hey, Path 11 podcast listeners. I was wondering if you have checked out our Patreon page yet. If not, you can go to path11podcast.com and click on the Patreon button. And for just $1 donation, you can have access to some private things that we were putting up on the Patreon page, like my MBT experience that I took in Tennessee with Tom Campbell. I did an audio journal for about the 4 days explaining what had happened to me during my binaural beat sessions. It was amazing, impacted my life, changed my life, but we are only going to allow our Patreon supporters access to the 4 days of my journal entry. And it is a Food for Thought Friday, so that is where you can find it. You can donate just $1 to listen to it. If you like the content that we have up on Patreon, you can continue to keep your subscription for $1 a month. Otherwise, you can cancel it at any time. So head on over to path11podcast.com and click on the button that says Patreon. I have a quick announcement before we get to our guest today on the Path 11 podcast, and I wanted to remind you that you can head on over to our website, path11productions.com, and you're going to see Afterlife Awareness Conference. I'd like you to click on that link, and I want you to know that we now have a membership to the directory of all the videos from this live stream event that we filmed back in November of 2018. There were some amazing speakers at this conference, which include William Buhlman from the Monroe Institute, Suzanne Northrup, and Thomas John, who were amazing psychic mediums. You get a chance to see them reading the audience and the people validating what they were saying. Another one of my favorites was Suzanne Geisman, who is also a medium and intuitive counselor and told a fantastic account and story of a soul that had passed away but left all of these clues and came back to communicate with people. Monica Williams Murphy, she is a doctor and had a great presentation about conscious dying in the clinical setting. Terry Daniel and Linda Fitch also had amazing workshops that they presented as well. So I'd like you guys to head on over path11productions.com and click on Afterlife Conference. Check out and see all the videos that we have available to you for this membership that we have going on. And now on to our show. We are going to be talking about an issue that might have touched many of your lives, many of our listeners' lives. I know that we are always trying to answer the questions, is there life after death? Some of you may have had a family member in the past that may have committed suicide or have had a suicide attempt, or maybe you yourself have struggled with depression in your life. And we are going to talk a lot about that today, which is a little off the beaten path, but somewhat connected to the material that we usually do. But I think it's a very important topic. And my guest today, Cindy Goodman-Stolberg, is going to be joining us. And you may find that some of the reasons for depression might be related to our relationships. And that might be something that you've never really thought about before. But I wanted to kind of just let you know the seriousness of how it affects so many of us. Depression affects so many of us on a yearly basis. So I did go to get the suicide statistics of 2017 for just a reference. I haven't actually visited this website in a while. I used to teach suicide prevention at an Air Force base quite a few years ago. So I was up to date on it, but I hadn't looked at it in a while. And on average, there are about 129 suicides per day, and it's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. So those are just some staggering numbers. And in Cindy Goodman's book, Feeling Better, she does have a little bit of a checklist of 13 signs that you may be depressed. And if you've been experiencing a number of these symptoms on the list that I'm about to read for at least 2 weeks, and they've been affecting your relationships and your day-to-day functioning, you could be depressed. So I'm just going to read those off. And I want you to think about this maybe for yourself or some friends, family members, and coworkers. Number 1, you feel sad a lot of the time. 2, you just don't care about things anymore. You are overcome with feelings of guilt. feeling worthless, can't concentrate, have gained or lost weight without dieting, have trouble sleeping, or you sleep all the time. Your performance at work or school could be suffering. Making decisions seems harder than it used to. You may be experiencing physical symptoms that don't have a physical cause. You're avoiding seeing your friends, may have thoughts about hurting yourself, and just can't seem to see the positive side of anything. So I am going to bring on Cindy Goodman-Stolberg, who is a psychologist and has been counseling individuals, couples, groups, and families for more than 40 years. She is the co-author of Feeling Better and co-director of the Institute for Interpersonal Psychotherapy with Dr. Ronald J. Frey. And Cindy, welcome.
Thank you very much, April, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you and to your listeners today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I know it's a little bit of a heavy topic, but the great thing that I loved about your book is that you made it feel very approachable and very easy, and that there is a research-proven formula to really lift people up and out of their depression. And it's using a fancy word called interpersonal psychotherapy, or IPT therapy. And, back in my training, we were taught the CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and we're finding that the IPT therapy is something that everyone is moving more towards and has great research to back it.
Absolutely. And why I really believe in it, and I feel it's very valuable, and it is recommended highly by psychology and psychiatry guidelines with equal effectiveness to CBT, is that when you have good, meaningful, constructive relationships, you're going to feel better. And if you're struggling with depression and you work on the relationships that certainly can be impacting and triggering your mood difficulties, you're going to feel better more quickly. And so it's really nice to know that it's treatable and that it's short term, that you can work with, on the issues, one issue at a time, maybe for up to, 12 weeks, and you'll feel better and you'll know what you did to feel better so that you can keep using those strategies and those techniques. So I'm really, really happy to share this model called IPT. That's the easy way to do it with listeners and with anyone who wants to share that with their family and friends as well.
Yeah, now I'd like you to begin by letting us know why it's our relationships that hold the key. I mean, right in your introduction, you talk about that the relationships hold the key to your happiness. It's not your inflexible thinking, negative self-talk, perfectionism, inability to bounce back, or wonky brain chemistry.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, we tend to overlook some things that may seem simple or common sense. I think the people who created this, Dr. Clurman and Myrna Wiseman used to say it was sometimes information your grandmother would have told you if you'd listened to your grandmother, And it basically, I think when you think about it, there are 4, pretty broad areas that relate to relationships. If you're having conflict with someone, if there's, conflict, even if it's not that you're yelling at each other, constantly, but if there's slow, simmering tension, that, it's hard to feel good when that's happening and when you're, dealing with those issues. If you've lost a loved one and you're dealing with an unresolved bereavement where it's been maybe a number of years and you're still feeling as badly as you felt when they first passed away, or you're transitioning in your life, even sometimes good things. So you have a new baby, but, you're now, you and your partner are trying to figure out how we're going to manage. You're sleepless, you're tired, you don't see the same people anymore. You've been fired from a job, you're going through a divorce. All of these things, or you're also feeling lonely and isolated. So even if you're in a room with people, you don't feel connected. You don't know how to relate or to feel good with those people. All of these factors, which are very relationship based, are going to, you can think about it. How can you not feel in a bad mood, or how can you not struggle when these things are happening in your life?
Now, would you ever have people that might play devil's advocate and say, well, I do have all of these great relationships in my life. I'm very happily married. My family, my siblings I'm very close to them. I love my job and what I do, but I'm just depressed. And I think it has to do with my lineage. My depression runs in the family. It must be my brain chemistry.
I mean, certainly people can say that, and then you'll have to say, well, let's look at it. Let's look together at what's happening, and if it's occurring. It's great because some people will say that to me, even will say, I woke up and I really felt terrible this morning and I have no idea why. And it's very interesting because if you actually examine, say, well, what happened yesterday? Well, I was struggling with a problem at work, and then I had to deal with a million things I had to do when I got home, and everybody was bugging me. So sometimes people will say everything's great, and they will say that, I have great relationships and this and that, because they don't necessarily want to acknowledge that there's some problem or some difficulty, or they may never have experienced what it really means to have a meaningful relationship. So they may get along with other people in their lives, but it's also hard to know how the other people are feeling in their lives. Do they come to them and talk to them? Do they want to spend time with them? So we're not arguing the fact that there certainly are components. We don't know what the cause of depression is. There's a lot of arguments about that, but most of the time when people are feeling depressed, it affects their functioning. Right? If you're kind of down and out, and you can get to work every day and you're getting along with people, then I'd say, fine, carry on, But if you're feeling depressed, really, and you'd have to evaluate what they mean by that too. Are they feeling, really down and can't do things? Or are they just kind of, they expect to get up every day and be excited or happy, which I don't know about you, but I'm not sure that's realistic, right?
Right.
Everybody's not jumping out of bed going, whoopee, here we go again,
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things. I mean, and if people are doing okay and they're not bothered by what they're dealing with, then carry on. But if someone feels they are depressed, I would spend some time examining things a little more closely.
And as we're talking about, relationships, and this correlation with depression, in some cases where I've, delved deeper with my clients too about what is it that is making them feel depressed, sometimes it's their relationship with themselves or their, inability to connect with their own purpose or, not knowing what that is in life. And it may not be the relationships with others, but specifically the relationship with themselves.
And partly the issue then becomes is how are they going to deal with that issue? And can they, we certainly believe that connecting with other people to help solve those things is vital and is quite crucial. So have you talked to anybody about how you're feeling, that you're not sure what your purpose is or what you'd like to be doing? Have you asked, or are you keeping that to yourself and not sharing it with other people, right? Have you ever talked to someone who has felt similarly, and then that others have gone through this as well, so you don't feel as alone or you don't feel as, uncertain about what's going on for you, right? You don't feel that you're the only one who's ever felt that way. How have other people managed to find that in their lives? Those people who have dealt with, some difficulties or aren't sure what to do. How have they dealt with it? What can you benefit from them that always can then you can use as a way to encourage yourself or find what you're looking for? So I think that to us, it's who in your life is very, very important, right? And how do you connect to those people when you're not sure or when you're struggling versus doing it yourself?
Exactly. Now, in your book, instead of breaking it down by chapters, you broke it down into weeks.
Yes.
And I like that because it just, like I said, it seems doable. And when you're reading something that you can complete something in 8 to 12 weeks, it's like, okay, yeah, let me go through, each of these. And I would like you to go through, if you don't mind, kind of what the process is with IPT therapy to give people broad overview of the weeks that, if they went out and they purchased your book and they wanted to try this out, what they could expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a very kind of step-by-step approach, and very practical, so that people know that they're going to, when they read it, there are going to be things in here they can try that we have seen that work. So at the beginning, we really want people to understand what depression or mood difficulties are, that it's temporary, it can be looked at as an illness, just like breaking one's leg can. It's not about blaming yourself. It's not about feeling that you're not doing good enough or that you're lazy or you're bad. So we educate people, and we want them to educate the people in their lives. And then we really look very carefully in an IPT way at your relationships. So you build your social circle. What do I like about people in my, you take a person who you're dealing with, who you may be struggling with, or you may not be. What do I like about that relationship? What don't I like about that relationship? What would I like to be different? So you really sit down and you draw your social circle and you take a look at the relationships you have, and you identify if there's a relationship that is contributing to your mood difficulty. And then, like I mentioned, in terms of, you pick a focal area, a common issue that's contributing to how you feel. Is it conflict? Is it bereavement? Is it transitions? Is it loneliness and isolation? And when you pick one of those areas, then you create a goal. And you create one goal that's concrete, that you can work towards in those weeks, to solving, to addressing, to making yourself feel better with that. And then the next few weeks are really the different strategies that you use in order to achieve that goal. Let's say, and we try to help people make that concrete. So if you say, I want to be the best mother I can be, and I want to never yell at my kids again, that's kind of unrealistic, I think. I don't know about you, but, if you want to say, I want to have a constructive conversation with my adolescents about how much screen time they're using, that's a constructive goal. That's something that you can achieve in 8 weeks. And so as the chapters progress, we then walk you through the steps that it takes to accomplishing that goal, in how to communicate more effectively, how to phrase the conversations. And we have in there a very helpful chapter, I think, that's a conversation starters, right? So how people sometimes will start a conversation by, saying something maybe negative, I hate it when you do that. That doesn't get you very far, right? But if you say, I'd like to sit down and talk with you about how much time the kids are on screens, that may work better than a different approach. So we talk about expectations, we talk about looking at what you're doing, and we talk about practicing. And then we really carry on to the point where people have achieved their goals and know what they did. So that's kind of the overview of the 12 weeks.
Now, I also know that you co-wrote the book, like I said in the introduction, with Ronald Frey, and he has the Guy Talk sidebars.
Yes.
Do you want to mention why?
He's great. Ron and I have been working together for 20 years, and we have a great relationship when we're teaching and training clinicians, learning IPT, and Ron is the guy perspective. So, not to be, too stereotypical, but he's terrific when he talks about what's like from a guy's perspective. And really, it's good in terms of guys reading it and being able to identify with, how do guys talk to each other about their feelings, and they, as he says, guys don't really do that as easily as women do, right? And it's good because then women can understand why guys respond the way they respond sometimes. Like, I can talk to my friends for hours, my girlfriends, and they're happy to hear repeated stories, but guys aren't as keen about that, right? So, Ron does a wonderful, wonderful job of kind of describing guy talk and what guy talk means and how guys deal with their feelings and their and discussions about feelings and making changes and the best ways to kind of deal with some of the issues related to how men handle things.
Right. And, I'm sure that we have some of our listeners who are in therapy themselves. And of course, I'm biased. I think everybody should be in therapy. It's good for the spiritual path, evolving yourself, trying to be a better person. But can you explain what the difference is between, say, traditional talk therapy and IPT, and why IPT, not saying that, traditional talk therapy isn't effective or helpful, but,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, different forms of therapy are useful. It's interesting. I think I used to feel the way you did, but I'm probably a little bit older. And it's like, okay, if people are open to wanting to sit down and look at things and talk to one another and make some change in their life, then I think therapy is fantastic, right? And I think being able, what IPT does is it really does try to be time limited. And that to me has been an important part of the therapy. It's like, if you want to make a change, let's just not talk about it forever, about what you're feeling or what someone's doing or what you've done for the last 10 years. Let's just do something about it. And so I often ask clients, I'll say to them, if they'll tell me, well, this situation has been going on for a long time and it's really upsetting me. And I'll ask them how they're interacting or what they're doing. And I'll say, how's that working for you? Well, if it's not working for you, then you may want to try something different. So what IPT does is it becomes very structured, step by step. As I'm saying, you identify your social circle, you check the focal area you want to deal with, you create a goal, you work on it by looking at the different options you have, you talk to other people who have been through what you've been through. They may have some great ideas for you. You try it out. You see what works or what doesn't work. And so that time frame and that structure, which is very collaborative, it's really up to, I'm not going to be telling the person what to do. I'm going to offer them some ideas and some approaches that they may have not tried before. And then it's really up to them. It's like, you give it a try. If you want to feel the same way that you're feeling and you're feeling crummy, well, I'll feel badly that you're doing that. But if you want to try something different, give it a shot. You can always go back to your old ways. It's like learning to ride a bike, right? Initially we're all a little nervous. And it's funny, I was thinking about this example we use. And people tend, when they learn to ride a bike, they're not by themselves. They usually have someone, right, standing behind them, holding them on their seat until they let go, right? So it's like you feel nervous and you feel concerned and maybe I'll fall. But you know what? When you learn how to ride, it feels pretty wonderful, doesn't it? You know what I mean? To be able to take off and have that freedom and feel good about yourself. So that's another aspect of IPT. I really encourage people to focus on, if they try something different, how does that make them feel? So if I speak up to my boss and I say, I'm really struggling with the amount of work I have, can we talk about how we can deal with this? No matter what the boss says, pay attention to how it felt for you to speak up in an assertive manner that made you feel. And normally, it really makes someone feel good, that they're not just feeling crappy, they're not feeling, put upon, they're not angry, they're not just resentful. They felt good because they tried to make the situation better for themselves. And that's a huge important step with IPT as well. So it's different than talk therapy or CBT in that it's not, in CBT, there's thought records, you fill out homework and things. You don't really do homework in IPT. You do things in between weeks or chapters or sessions, but that's up to you, how you decide to do it versus filling anything out.
Now, do you believe that your book, that somebody could pick it up and go through the 12 weeks without really needing to go to see a therapist and work with a therapist with this? I mean,
I think for sure they could. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very common sense. It's a very step-by-step approach. We really have tried to be as specific as possible and give people conversation starters. If you wanted to address a conflict with someone else, then we give you 4 or 5 ideas of what you can say. And certainly there has been, I mean, we haven't necessarily researched our book yet because it's just come out, but there certainly has shown to be research that shows that, self-help material can be very effective in helping people feel better. So, it's great to read it. If for some reason you're still feeling at the end of reading it that you want to work with a therapist, then there's no reason why you can't. You'll certainly have a lot of information and a lot of good tools to use as you're working with, if you begin to work with a therapist, but there's no reason, why you can't. And for some people, it's harder to access therapy. It's not as easy to find an IPT therapist, or depending on where you live. I mean, sometimes you can also access, I do some work online. So people who want to, let's say, connect with me and work with me, in more of a Skype format, or I have a secure encrypted system, if you can't find someone locally or close to where you are. But I really believe we wanted people to use the book so they could make changes for themselves.
Right. And I was hoping that maybe we could go into week 2 just a little more in depth, to give people just really a taste of what they're going to be working on, and having people who are listening to this podcast just to really begin to think about their social circle and identifying the relationships in their lives that are either helpful or hurtful. So that might be a great way to kind of get into how somebody would begin to work this process.
Yes, when you do the social circle, it's really a circle. So draw a bunch of concentric circles with you in the middle. Your name goes in the middle, and then the circle around that, and then the circle that goes outside of that. You can draw as many circles as you want. And it's very interesting, even exercise to do, to plot, down who are the people in my life who are important to me and who am I close to. And you jot the names down of those people, and do I put them in the first circle or the second one or the furthest one out? And that's sometimes hard to do. There are no really right or wrong answers, but the exercise in itself gives you some awareness of what's going on and gives you a visual picture of what's different or than you may think it is. So, I've done this certainly myself as well. And it's not just about a family, but it can include friends. It can include colleagues. It can include people who you have been friends with and aren't anymore, people you may just know as an acquaintance and would like to maybe build more of a relationship with. It's important also to include any people who have died or passed away who were, you were connected to, because that's one of the focal areas that contribute sometimes to depression is a loved one who's gone. And even you may either have not let yourself experience the sadness that comes with the loss of that person, or you may still be feeling as bad. So when you put down the different people on your social circle, one at a time, you identify them, and you jot down, you remind yourself, or you can do it on the phone if you want, or you can, because we really don't have to write that much anymore, do we? We can record everything we do. So you basically want to say, when do I speak to them? What do I talk to them about? Do your relationships just talk about the weather and sports, or do you actually talk about meaningful personal things? Some people don't. Right? Some people don't want to share that with someone else. They may feel they're burdening other people when they tell other people, some of their problems, or they're maybe going to be judged or felt negatively. So you want to identify, what am I talking or doing with these people? What do I like about the relationship? What don't I like about the relationship? What would I like to be different? Because it also asks the question, I think what's important is that IPT doesn't view relationships as good or bad or black or white, that they're usually gray. And it's not about people being all good or all bad, in the sense that some people may feel that one person should meet all of their needs all of the time, whenever they want them to meet them, and exactly the way they want to. And I don't know what you think, but I don't think that's very realistic. right? And so I think having realistic expectations, and when you look at what you like in a relationship, you can then see what are the important things, right? It was quite funny. I was talking to a group of women recently, and they said, I really liked my ex-partner, and he and I had we had such great interests, and we enjoyed the same things, but he cheated on me. So I kind of looked at her and I kind of said, well, what's important to you? What's more important, having mutual interests or having a trustworthy partner, right? You have to decide what are the things that are important to you. And when you begin to sit down and look at those relationships, then you get a much clearer picture about what's going on in your life and where would you like to spend some time working on? What would you like to change or improve? Now, for some people, unfortunately, that their circle will be pretty blank. And those are the people that are pretty lonely and pretty isolated and have never been able to establish good friendships, or who never have been able to sustain those friendships. And then we're going to help those people change that so that they can have better connections. So I think you're right. That social circle, which we keep coming back to throughout the whole process, is a really valuable tool, really valuable IPT tool.
Yeah, another thing that I'm thinking of, just like with my own clinician hat, are, because I'm not trained in this therapy, but I really, after reading your book, I love it.
Come to Toronto and get trained.
Okay, Toronto's close. Yeah. But I also think about, the person that is layered with different levels of trauma and grief. Like, let's say if, I could think of one client that had both parents pass away. Mm-hmm. And I would say she is late 40s. Both parents had already passed away. A divorce crippled her, a suicide attempt in the past related to the divorce. Then with that became more physical ailments and is now addicted in some ways to physical pain pills for their back, mm-hmm. and is like constantly struggling now to find a job, is very educated, holds a master's degree. But, now with the pain pills and the physical pain in the back, complicated with all of this grief, and I almost feel like how does this ITP therapy kind of begin to work within those layers? Because I'm picturing this person drawing their social circle and just looking at all of these different relationships and how that kind of blends into all of these different things that happen. And it almost seems like this person may have to go through these 8 to 12 weeks like 10 times.
Well, I think number one, you're right. I think the hardest part with someone like that who has certainly suffered a lot is figuring out what the other thing I think I didn't mention yet about IPT is what is happening here and now that is the most stressful, the most significant, the most difficult. Or on the other hand, we can look at what's happening in the here and now that might be the easiest thing to tackle. So I would want to sit down with that particular person, and I would want to know what happened today, what happened yesterday, what happened the day before that was something that she wants to address and maybe experience differently, right? So when someone's struggling, if you have PTSD or a chronic illness or whatever, I think it's really interesting because John Markowitz has written a great book on, it's more for the clinicians, but IPT for PTSD, without having to go to re-exposure, without having to be exposed to the previous traumatic events. And it's wonderful because they're getting really good results. But it's based on what do we need to do now when she's feeling really awful, when she's in pain or having some difficulty. Is she still willing to connect with other people? And in what way is she connecting with them? What's she doing? What's she saying? What could she be doing differently in any way, shape, or form? Even though she's in a difficult situation, is there something we can start with that will make her feel a little bit better. And usually it's with other people, right? It's not usually, people don't love to just sit at home by themselves and watch TV. It doesn't necessarily make them feel, I mean, I like TV, trust me, and there are times, right? But my life would be pretty bad if I didn't have the wonderful people in my life that I do. So with that woman, I would want to know, is there somebody? Is there something? What does she want to do today? Or what happened this past week that was difficult? And I would try, I don't know enough about it. Maybe you've worked with her and you can give me more information. But what can we do that we'll work on for those 8 weeks? And what did you do to help yourself feel better? And then guess what? Sure, in the next 8 weeks or the next thing that comes up, she's still going to use those same techniques. If it was maybe being clearer about what she needed, if she needed some help with some groceries, right? But let's say she offered, you'd want to know what kind of reciprocal things were going on. If her back was too bad for her to get out and do grocery shopping, maybe she would ask someone to do it, but maybe she's okay at home doing research on the computer and she knows her friend's trying to build a LinkedIn page. So why wouldn't she say to that friend, if you don't mind picking up a few things for me, I'm really happy to help you work on your new Facebook page or or I'd be happy to help you with your resume, right? So she may not have thought, she may just be feeling so lousy and so awful that she can't see that she still has some value and some things that she can offer. And it's not just asking someone else to do something for her, right? So that's the way I would be building very, very, very small steps, which even though sometimes people feel, well, it's not enough, guess what? That's a good place to start. Right. It's a really good place to start.
Because the past can almost seem too overwhelming. It's almost like, where do I start to? So to even, just break it down to the present moment of that week, I think makes it that much more doable. And the key, though, and, I think that you reiterate it in your book, too, is that people also have to really be ready to make the change in their lives.
Right. You are right. Yeah. That's why I say, I'm not as sure that therapy is for everybody unless they want to try something new.
Right.
But, and it's funny because look at whenever someone's ready to do that, great. So, even Ron will tell the story where someone comes for a while, gets to session 6 or 7 and says, no, I can't do it. And then a year later, she comes back and they start at week 7, right? They don't start at the beginning again. She says, you know what, Dr. Frey, I'm ready. So it's funny, though, too, I will ask people, I think it's really interesting when people say, well, I think I'm not ready. And I'll say to them, what will you be saying or doing when you're ready? So I want to know the specifics about what you think being ready looks like, right? Because, a lot of us are never ready, but you know what? You'll have to sometimes push yourself, even though you don't feel like going out. Maybe you don't feel like being with people. The fact that you did it, I'll say, well, look, it's up to you. Give it a try. See what happens and then see if it works. So if you pushed yourself to do it and you had a good experience, then you're going to want to do it again. So that's what we call this virtuous circle, which is like, you have a good experience, you try it again. You have another experience, you try it again, right? So, you reach out to others, and even though sometimes you feel, oh, it's not going to work and it's going to be awful, that's part of the depression talking. Depression, one of the symptoms is negativity, is feeling irritable, is feeling negative. And so one of the ways you accomplish that changing is by changing the experience. And if you have a good experience, then why don't you want to go and try it again, right?
Right, exactly. So let's give our listeners some resources about, if we do have any therapists who are listening and they actually want to check this out or become certified, where they can get that and where people can find the book, so they can maybe do it themselves and not have to enter therapy at all, but just buy the book and let it.
For sure. I mean, for people to find us, Feeling Better, the book, feelingbetterthebook.com is really the easiest way to get to us and to remember. So if you remember wanting to feel better and you remember the book, check us out, really, feelingbetterthebook.com. You can order the book there. You can order it from Amazon. You can order it from Barnes & Noble. You can, even I think it's on Walmart too, I think. But if you want to order an audiobook, if you want to order it online, also look us up on Instagram, same thing, Feeling Better the Book, or LinkedIn. And also there's a link from Feeling Better the Book to our training website for clinicians who would like to have us come to them to do training or come to us. We have trainings usually in the spring and the fall. Interpersonalpsychotherapy.com. That's our training website. But everybody can find us if they check out Feeling Better the Book. And we'd be delighted. I'd love to hear from people. Please write in our forum and let us know what you need and want. If people are interested in some online therapy, I can certainly, provide that. So we're very excited to share IPT, with the world, because unfortunately I call it the best kept secret in psychology, right? So, right. But it's a proven method. It's fantastic.
Right.
It's really a wonderful, wonderful model of therapy.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that your book came across my desk, and you were a great guest on the Path 11 podcast. I hope that this podcast will help our listeners or help people that are connected to our listeners. And I just wish you a lot of luck with the book. I'm sure it's going to do great. I'm glad that it's out there and that we're giving it some exposure.
Thank you very, very much. And a happy and a healthy new year to all your listeners and yourself. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Path 11 podcast today. I hope you all enjoyed this show. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, I'd like you to do so, because we are going to start putting some content over there that is only for our Patreon subscribers. You can get content for as little as donating $1 a month, and it could just be a one-time donation. We have other freebies over there that you can get depending upon how much you would like to donate. And again, it could be a one-time donation, or you can continue to keep your subscription on a monthly basis at that donation level. But I just put my MBT immersive experience, which was a four-day intensive meditation training in Tennessee with physicist Tom Campbell. I was listening to binaural beats, going to altered states of consciousness, having out-of-body experiences and life-changing experiences that I was able to bring back for myself, for my clients, for my friends. That was just out of this world. So if you would like to listen to that, I'd like you to head on over to path11podcast.com. You're going to see an orange button that says Patreon. Become a Patreon today, and you can have access to that podcast. And I would like to remind you to head on over to path11productions.com and check out the membership that we have for the Afterlife Awareness Conference. We have over 25 hours of footage with amazing speakers like William Buhlman, Thomas John, Terry Daniel, Suzanne Geisman, Suzanne Northrup, Linda Fitch, Austin Wells, just a few people to name off that were amazing. These workshops are just so valuable. So I think that you would really enjoy it. It's also a great thing to think about, to maybe give the gift to somebody who is struggling with grief. If you are looking for resources, this is a great conference to send people to check out. And thanks again for listening today.